Good afternoon, Artie.
Good afternoon, Michelle.
So good to see you. Now I'm in the driver's seat. You had me on your podcast. Now I have you on mine. So thank you for
Okay.
being here. Uh-oh. We lost him. Of all times. All right. So we have Artie Bernaducci, who's joining us, and he will join us again in a second. So Artie is here to talk to us about meditation, and I have heard every excuse under the sun as to why people can't meditate, why they have tried it and they just don't have the ability to get quiet. And so Artie's going to share with us today a little bit about his journey around meditation. Because I really want people to understand that everybody can do this. Even, if you've never tried it or if you've tried it and you've gotten frustrated, it's a remarkable tool to help us manage our stress levels. We have this stress in our lives that causes us to, have those cortisol releases. And in order to really manage that stress so that it doesn't compound in our body, it's a really great thing to do is to take on a meditation practice, because I like to compare it to a washcloth that is wet that you're wringing out. And when you wring it out, it actually you're clearing your mind. So he's back. He's here with us. Something happened.
That was bizarre. I don't know what happened. Sorry about that.
It's all good. It's all
That
good.
was crazy.
I was just telling people a little bit about you and what we're going to be talking about today around meditation. So I'm really glad that you got back in. So, but anyway, so I'm so glad I had met you through your podcast. You invited me on your show, and so today we're going to talk about meditation. And Artie, I think I've known you for several months now, and I recently found out how spiritual you were and how important meditation has been for your life. And I can't wait to dive into that. But before we do start talking about a little bit about meditation, just a little bit about my series. So I created Michelle's Conversations That Matter to really elevate the conversation around well-being and mental health. Having people on from all walks of life, from clinicians to individuals with stories that they can share with us. And then what I get to do professionally is I work with organizations to recenter their employees. And one of the key components in my workshops for employees is meditation and other tools to help people recenter themselves, especially now during the pandemic. And so that's what I get to do every day, and I love it. So could you take a second and just introduce yourself, Artie, who you are, where you live, what you do for a living?
So I was born way back when. No, just kidding. So I have a couple of businesses, and principally I'm in the insurance field, but I also have a podcast called retirementafter60.com. I have been involved in that field for about over 30 years. Prior to that, I was a mason contractor for 12. Prior to that, I was a college graduate, and I didn't use my degree ever, unfortunately. But I'm married. I have 4 children. I have 4 grandchildren, and it's been a whole lot of fun getting to this point so far. I was introduced to meditation, which is really one of the most singular moments in my life, back in 1977. And I actually picked up, my roommate Mike actually introduced me to it because he was a meditator, and I started to learn about it in two ways, actually. They kind of coincided with each other. The first one was a transcendental meditation, which has been around forever. The Beatles made it famous in the United States. And also a book that's profoundly influenced my entire life, was called Autobiography of a Yogi. And that book is going on its 75th anniversary. And it was written in 1946, and it's one of the top 100 spiritual books of all time. It's an amazing document. So it's those things have really been the main drivers to my education on meditation.
That's amazing. And we were talking before we went on the air, and then we had lunch a while ago. There were 2 things that resonated big time from our conversations.
Sure.
One is that you're married to your best friend.
Yep.
that was like so moving to me when you said that. That was really sweet. And then the other thing was the fact that we both are trained in TM. I
Yes.
thought that was really cool. And so I learned TM, oh gosh, it must be like 8 years ago. People like Jerry Seinfeld were talking about it. I just was very, very intrigued by it. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it right. So I'm going to take a class on how to do this. So I did that. And some of those meditations when I was in class would be so deep. I didn't even know that was possible. So, I teach employees how to meditate and just like dip their toe in. We don't even do anything long, 3 minutes, nothing really, because I want them to understand the feeling that you can achieve through meditation. And so talk to us a little bit about, how your practice evolved from TM to what you're doing now. Tell us a little bit about who is Yogananda.
Sure. Yeah, Paramahansa Yogananda. Yogananda was the teacher who wrote the book Autobiography of a Yogi. So the book is his life story, and it's fascinating because he demystifies a lot of the science of yoga. Yoga has a lot of parts to it, which I'll explain in a little bit. But the idea is how to unite our individuality, or the goal of yoga in itself is to unite the individual soul back to God. And there's a whole lot of ways of explaining that. You have the some of the metaphors we use. We use the ocean as being the universal, and then you take the individual, which would be like a droplet of water in the ocean, but it's still part of the whole. So the idea is we are always part of the whole, but we just have to get better at knowing how to do that, to acknowledging that. Because the ego, which everybody knows what the term ego is, but from a philosophical and spiritual aspect, the word ego is referring to the identification that separates us from the soul. That's basically what it's doing. It's separating our understanding. And the thing that makes that even more difficult is the fact that keeps us caught up is our senses, sight, touch, smell, you know what I mean? All those, it's the antennas to the world. But the problem is our senses are very, very dull instruments from a spiritual standpoint. You have to go beyond the senses. And the science of meditation, when yoga, I should say, the science of yoga, meditation is an aspect of it. That is the purpose of that, is to still the mind. And once you still the mind, you actually can start to have some valid inner experiences of peace. And let's face it, that's something that most people don't have. There's no peace in this world because of all the conflicting things. My ego says this is the way it's supposed to be. My ego says this is supposed to be the way. And what do? You butt heads, you fight. Everybody's so too sensitive. If you say something wrong, they get all upset. It's because they're just always on the edge. People are always on the edge in modern life because a night's sleep, a really, really, really good night's sleep is great. You wake up refreshed in the morning, and then the minute your cat pees outside of the box or the dog poops on the floor, guess what? All that peace is gone.
Yeah.
If you are peaceful and that happens, guess what? It's not such a big thing.
Yeah.
You just bend over and go, no, for crying out loud, pick up the poop and you're done and you move on.
Yeah.
It's, you know what I mean? So it's the idea of being able not to take life and circumstances as seriously as we do.
Yeah. 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 I always mention this book because it really did impact me. Byron Katie's Loving What Is. And it's such a good book because it gets you to realize that so much of our upsets are self-generated because we disagree with them. And the only way that I think that you have the ability to stop and not disagree with them is if you come from a place of deep peace, if you come from a place of calm. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're like a lit flame. You're like just waiting to just, expand. And, it's such a different experience. I know for me, when I meditate, my day is an entirely different experience, and I am not at the effects of the day. I am much more centered and in control. And I guess that's the only way I can really explain it. Tell Tell us about your practice, how it evolved, and some of the benefits that you've realized since doing it.
So when I first started, I learned the basic techniques of transcendental meditation, and that was with me for a while.
Mhm.
Then, probably like around 1980, so I learned TM in 77, so about 1980, one night I had a dream about this, yogi teacher, and, it was like and then I found him in Yoga Magazine, and I was like, "Oh, that's an interesting thing," right? So part of that dream was about being in this long corridor, and it turned out that I ended up going up to that what they call their ashram. It's a spiritual community. It's up in South Fallsburg, New York, and I was actually standing in that lobby waiting to go to have breakfast. So I'm like, okay, so I had a dream about this guy twice. Him and I walking on the beach, one, two, just being in this hallway. So I was like, that's pretty interesting. So that his teachings were around something known as Shaktipat. And what Shaktipat is, it's where a spiritual master has the ability to awaken the spiritual energy in the lower parts of the spine. Now, some people may be familiar with what we call the chakras. Are you familiar with the chakras?
I am.
So for those that aren't, what the chakras are, they exist in the dream body, if you want to call it that. Some people call it the astral body, which is basically the vibrational body of energy around us, and it represents in the spine 7 points of consciousness that on the lower end are more like the survival level, where it's like, only me and only like the sexual, it's the bottom one is the I forget in the terms, but when you start at the very bottom, it deals with your individuality, sexual gratification, uh, digestive gratification, being able to eat and so forth, survival basically. Once you get to the fourth chakra, which is the heart, that's when you can have you finally have the awareness and the ability to look beyond yourself. Like, say someone, to make a point of this, say someone is single and their entire life has been about them. And then the time comes that they become a parent. When they become a parent, that whole side of them has changed because now it's a different reality. And that's where there's such profound love between parent and child. A
Mhm.
parent first become a parent because it's
Mhm.
like such an overwhelming, joyful experience. And then and the chakras continue up to the top of the head, which is what they call the seven petal, thousand petal lotus, and
Okay.
that's where you have super consciousness.
Mhm.
But not to use terms that are a little out there. I want to kind of stay on track.
Sure.
So the idea of the Kundalini being awakened, it helps you pass through the difficulties and the wins in life because it gives you more and more awareness. It helps you get more, it speeds up your spiritual evolution, if you want to think of it in those terms, because it gives you the ability to see things that you may have saved time on from meditating for 40 years. You might be able to get in it in like 20 years or 15 years. It shortens the term. So that's what that experience was. And that was fantastic. After that, Muktananda was his name. Muktananda had what the yogis call the Mahasamadhi, which simply means that they are conscious of their soul and they can leave the body at will. And that's when he had his Mahasamadhi. It's very scientific.
Mhm.
That's one of the reasons why Yogananda wrote his book. He explained a lot of these the Indian philosophies so that Americans can understand it. He
Mhm.
demystified it very well in the book.
Mhm.
So after that, what I ended up doing is I started my masonry business. I had a construction business for 12 years.
Mhm.
During that time, I practiced meditation, but not like I had done earlier.
Mhm.
But along the way, I actually did meet another teacher by reading a book that was talking about manifest your destiny. And I can't remember the author's name, but it was a brilliant book. He passed away a few years ago. He was the original author of a book called The Erogenous Zones, way
Okay.
back in the 70s. I just can't think of his name right now.
Mhm.
Anyway, he had dedicated that book to this teacher who had this great understanding that he bestowed onto this author. Well, it turns out that that teacher was going to be in New York one night. And so I went there with a couple of my friends and we all started to meditate. And when they turned the lights down, we started to meditate. And when they turned the lights back on, half the room was gone because people couldn't sit for even 15 minutes
Oh,
just to meditate. But
wow.
because of my experience with Muktananda,
Uh-huh.
my body would sway a little bit when I'd be meditating.
Uh-huh.
So this teacher actually saw that and asked me if I would have dinner with him. Well, that developed into a very nice relationship for a few years. And my friend Jerry and I actually went to 2 trips to India with him to learn more about his. And then we came back, and for a year we taught a course in New York on his philosophies.
Wow.
But early on in 77, I did pick up Autobiography of a Yogi, and
Hmm.
that book bared fruit for me in 2000 when I actually became studied Yogananda's works to such a detail that I became what's called a Kriya Yogi. And that's his technique of the science behind meditation. And that's really been the most profound thing for me.
That's really amazing. And what's funny is I have to ask you this question about what you shared before about the fact that you had a dream and then you found yourself in that experience. Do you believe in the power of visualization?
Oh, of course. There's nothing that's created that wasn't a thought.
Yeah, in our minds. If it's in
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
they
Yes.
say they say if you go there in the mind, you'll go there in the body.
Yes.
I love that. I do believe in that. And my coach, for example, he's always telling me every morning, I want you to visualize. What are you visualizing? And I'm like, I don't know. This is why we do vision boards. This is why we get really present to what we want in our lives and the experiences that we want to have. But you telling that story is so amazing because it was like you dreamt it, you saw it, and it happened.
There's been a lot of those. And one of the things that happens when you meditate consistently, because you were talking about the compounding effect of meditation,
Yes, yes.
one of the things that it really does for you is it helps you actually get more in touch with your intuition. And when
Mm,
you get in touch with your intuition, it helps you distinguish between what you think is a feeling and what is intuition. There's a big difference.
mm,
When you know it's your intuition, you stand by it.
yeah,
You could be swayed in the feeling. You can't be swayed when your intuition says X.
yeah. So true. Let's talk about the common complaint that people have.
Okay, before I know what it is. Before you do it, let me
Okay,
explain something. Okay,
okay,
so
perfect.
one of the biggest things that uh, I want people to understand is the distinction between concentration and meditation. There is a major difference between the two.
Mm,
Concentration is where you withdraw your senses from all distracting qualities and focus on one thing, a thought, a person, whatever the case may be. Meditation is when you withdraw the same way, but you don't focus on one thing, you focus on God. Meditation, the science of meditation, is to help the individual soul realize its universality and its oneness with God. God is always around us, He's omnipotent. And so when you have this ability to have that true meditation, it's so much deeper than anything you could do from a meditation standpoint. Because a concentration standpoint, because the concentration is still focusing on the outside, not on the inside.
right.
So that's the distinction. Because people say, I meditate all the time. No, you're concentrating all the time. You're not
Yeah.
meditating. This is
Yeah.
a formal way to meditate. I'm not saying meditation, that people, when they say they're meditating, they're wrong. I'm just saying you have to distinguish between the two to know the difference. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes sense to you?
Awesome. Oh my God, totally. Totally, because we concentrate our lives, we concentrate ourselves through life,
Yes.
right? And we do. It's like a
Yeah, I
culture.
know. I know.
And instead of like, not. And so
Mhm.
before people don't know, okay, well, don't do that while you meditate. No, so the common complaint that I get all the time in my workshops and from people that I know is that I've tried, I sat there quietly, I closed my eyes, I did this, and I still had thoughts. I still had thoughts, right? And it's like, and so they go, I tried it doesn't work. I can't do it. I still have thoughts. So talk to us about those complaints. What do you say to the person that thinks that they're doing it wrong?
Well, they're not doing it wrong. They're just not spending enough time with it. And I'll explain what I mean. There's a saying that a saint is a sinner who never gave up.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
He never gave up the quest of trying to become a saint.
Yeah.
And when you sit for 10 minutes and give up, then that's not really anything good. You could identify it as also like when you go to the gym or anything like that that you would do that you focus on. But I use the gym because that's what that's my favorite analogy. So when you go to the gym for the first time, you might not be able to do what you could do after you've trained for a period of time. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Your muscles don't get stronger by just going there once a month. Your
Right.
muscles get stronger by consistency. Same
Right.
thing with meditation. It's okay if your mind is active as can be. The trick is, think about this analogy. If your cell phone rings, do you feel like you have to answer it immediately? If that's the case, then think about that phone ringing as being a thought that comes into your head. If you let the phone ring, it eventually shuts off.
Yeah.
The thought will shut off, but another one will follow it.
Yes.
All right. Now, as one thought follows and another follows, but if you keep putting that in place, what you will notice is your mind starts to become still. And then the next thing you'll go, hey, where am I? Because what happened is you went still. That even if it's for 2 seconds, it's like waking up in the morning. You go, oh wow, I wasn't aware of myself for a short period of time. What happens at that point, and the reason why the thoughts stop, is because the longer you can let yourself watch your thoughts like it's a movie, they're being ignored, so they go away. Like everybody doesn't want to be ignored. Thoughts don't want to be ignored. The more you focus on them, the bigger they get. And the
Yeah.
more you focus on, I can't not think about anything, and you think about stuff, guess what? You're going to keep thinking even more stuff.
Yeah.
But if you could just be an impartial observer of
Uh-huh.
your thoughts,
Hmm.
what happens over time is that you're reaching into a higher, more subtle realm of vibration that I don't know what the terms are. There's like, alpha and different thoughts. I don't know that I
Yeah.
haven't learned
I
that.
know. Mhm.
I'm not analytical like that.
Mhm.
But what happens is you enter that realm, and those are more subtle vibrations than the thought themselves.
Right.
And that's what happens when you get peaceful in meditation. Your vibrational in your brain has gotten to a more subtle realm, and that's why the thoughts slow down or stop.
Mhm.
And just like when you go to bed at night,
Yeah. Yeah.
when you fall asleep, you eventually go into a deep sleep
Right.
because your mind has stopped. That's really what we're talking about.
Right.
So anybody can meditate. You just
Yeah.
have to have a little bit more patience. But what compounds that?
Yeah.
Everything that's sensory. And
Mm.
we're in a society that moves so quickly, and we always have to be stimulated. All
Yeah.
the thoughts that come at us all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think about this thing.
Go
I mean, there's so much.
one day without it.
Oh my gosh. Like there's like, I got to jump on this app. I got to jump over here. I got to jump in this one. I got to jump here. And it's like, you're right. The sensory piece.
Mhm.
So I think that the big takeaway from what you just said is suspend the expectation that
Mhm.
when you sit down for the first time and you're still having thoughts that you're not doing it right.
Correct.
And stick with it. Like you said, stick
Right.
with it and acknowledge the thought, let it go, acknowledge the next thought, let it go, but be relentless with it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And you don't have to sit for an hour. Start with like 15 minutes.
Right.
15 minutes isn't that hard. It seems like an eternity the first few times. But
Right.
then also learn some basic breathing
Yeah.
techniques. Because what happens is when you get your breathing right, your active mind slows down.
Yeah.
This works. It's how it's correlated. That's how how we function.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's so great. And we were starting to talk a little bit about the compounding effect. And when I do my workshops, I only have them experience like a 3-minute meditation. We do there's a free Deepak Chopra 3-minute meditation on YouTube that anyone can grab and just try. And you don't even have your eyes closed. It's literally 3 minutes because I just want them to taste what that peacefulness is like.
Right.
Because I want them to be curious of, wow, if that was 3 minutes, what could 10 look like? What could 15 feel like?
Mhm.
And so the consistency part is key. So talk to us about the compounding effect of meditation if you adopt it in your life and have a consistent practice.
Well, if you have a consistent practice, you're going to become a better person overall, because what you're doing is you're dancing in a realm that is more refined. It refines your mind more than anything that you could do externally, any book that you can read, any subject that you could learn, any exercise that you can do. It refines you on a higher level. And
Mm-hmm.
there's something in the Eastern thought, that's called they call it Sanatana. I want to say Santana because Santana was my favorite musician, but Sanatana Dharma, and this is called the internal principles of right that uphold all creation, man's inherent duty to live in harmony with these principles. It's part of the science. This whole universe is built around science. And so the idea behind being able to meditate on a regular basis, what's going on for you individually is it's going to start making it easier for you to deal with all the things that come at you. And one of the things that will start to happen if you meditate on a regular basis is you get gifted with this wonderful experience of peace and joy, and life is wonderful. And then all of a sudden, you get smacked in the face again, and things get bad, and you go, I'm not going to meditate. I don't have the patience for it. But that's part of the journey. Part of the journey is to look at the looking at gain and loss. And I know people, I know in our capitalistic society, we don't like this, what I'm about to say, perhaps, but gain and loss, if you look at it with equal vision, where you don't take loss and gain with anything outside of it just being a situation, and you
Mm-hmm.
can look at it with even vision, your life will simplify so much, because the goal is that we're trying to simplify our lives and ourselves so that we could function at the highest level. And
Mm-hmm.
getting caught up in our emotions, and I'm not saying to be emotionless because we're an emotional being, but the
Right.
idea is, how do you master your emotions,
Right.
right? Because if you get very heated up about something, you lose control of your, it could be something that happens where you get way lost, and you
Mm-hmm.
hurt someone and say something you never wanted to say or meant or anything like that. So the idea of becoming a better person, aligning yourself with the universal laws, that's really what happens when you meditate, because your
Right.
nervous system is connected to the universe. I mean, to the
Right.
all the subtle energies of the world, right?
Right. Right.
If you really think about it, we're nothing but a battery that's
Right.
constantly being refilled by the universal energies, the forces of the sun and the earth. We
Mm-hmm.
got hands and feet. If you study anything about like acupuncture, and they talk about the meridians on
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff is related to
Mm-hmm.
this.
Yeah.
The energy comes in, the energy goes out.
Yeah.
So does that help?
Oh my God, so helpful. And I just had this funny, I wanted to share this because, a lot of people, I always hear this all the time. I'm like, okay, so I don't have time, Michelle. I don't have time. I don't have time to meditate. I hear this all the time. I don't have time. And then this meme always makes me laugh, right? Because, well, if you don't have time, then you really need to do this, right? If
Yes,
you
yes,
complain you
yes.
don't have time, then you absolutely must do this.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that that's a very important reality. No matter how stressed you are, no matter how busy you are, if you make the time to do it every day, you will realize that you're a better human being, that you feel more centered, that you feel more grounded, peaceful, able to deal with what
Right.
is coming at you, able
Yes.
to just be like, I got this. I got
Mhm.
this.
That when you try, like I see some of the really, really famous teachers, uh, any kind of teacher, and
Mm-hmm.
they're all talking about different things. But I can promise you that I'm not mentioning names because I like a lot of the teachers, but a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the things that they're talking about is self-talk, and self-talk only goes as far as you can go with it.
Right.
You saying, I am X,
Yeah.
I am X. Well, that I am X is only as far as your ability is to do that. But
Right.
when you can meditate and go even deeper, you can actually expand on those thoughts. So the idea of being able to be quiet is the fastest way to get to where you want to go.
Got it. You were sharing with me at lunch how with traditional TM, you are supposed to do it 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the afternoon, and you had this experience of yourself after adopting more frequent meditation. You want to share that story about just like the difference it made for you? And yeah, I think that would be a good thing to share because I don't think we realize I don't think we realize that little bit of extra effort can make all the difference.
Well, I got to be honest with you. I'm not 100% sure what exact experience I was talking about because there's been several of them.
Okay.
But the most profound thing I can say is that 20 years ago, when I first started doing what Yogananda has called Kriya Yoga, which is a
Mhm.
form of meditation,
Mhm.
one of the things that they had said that along the way, one day it seems like nothing is happening, and then all of a sudden you realize a whole lot has happened. And so for me, a few years ago, I had that experience, and maybe
Mhm.
this is what you're talking about,
Yeah.
because what it really does is it changes you. You completely change on such a level when you're serious about this, because the seriousness that goes in meditation, it's not just for mental peace,
Mhm.
it's for full realization.
Mhm.
You know, the Yogananda's group is called the Self-Realization Fellowship, and he
Mhm.
established it in 1920 in the United States.
Mhm.
And self-realization is really where you understand mentally, physically, and spiritually that you are one with God.
Mhm.
And this is not religious. This is
Mhm.
non-denominational. Anybody can meditate. There's not and there's no path that you can't meditate, because the whole point of religion has always been to make you seek a higher power. And
Mhm.
the seeking of that higher power is your soul or God, which
Mhm.
is one and the same.
Mhm.
If you think about the great saints in history, like Jesus and Buddha, and all of them, they reached a certain understanding that enabled them to do the miraculous things that they did. But they realized their unity with the Father,
Mhm.
with God.
Mhm.
So it's profound when you can get quiet enough to realize just how much of a universal person there is inside of you.
Yeah.
It's not like, "Oh my god, do I look okay for the party?" You're
Yeah.
not worrying about that.
Yeah.
You're not worrying about all those little things,
Yeah.
because those little things are the things that make you even more insecure.
Right. Right.
What do you do when someone comes up to you and starts cursing at you and saying, "What a belligerent jerk you are," or whatever they say to you? How do you respond? You
Yeah.
wanna punch them in the mouth, or you could also do it from this really fun story I heard once, where the guy was something happened to him, and this woman attacked him verbally, and he just looked at you and said, "Thank you for your blessing." And what he meant by that, he was sincere. He meant, "Okay, so this lady just saw something in me that I wasn't aware of myself. And because I wasn't aware of it, she pointed it out to me. That's why I thanked her." She
Wow.
might be wrong. She might be wrong, but his ego was so out of the way, he
Yeah.
was willing to accept that, and he wasn't hurt by the insult.
Yes.
But that's not how the normal person of the world thinks.
No. We're so easily triggered because there's so much stress. We don't
Correct.
manage the
Correct.
stress. And yeah, I follow a guy named, do you know Kyle Cease?
No, I don't.
Kyle Cease, I think that's how you pronounce his name. And he talks a lot about, self-awareness, meditation. And one of the things that in one of the videos that I watched, he said, I want you to, it was a big challenge. He's like, I want you to get up an hour early tomorrow, and I want you to sit in silence for an hour. And he goes, and you're probably all squirming about that. And you probably all have issues with that. He's like, but I want you to do it. He goes, just close your eyes. And he goes, and just watch the show.
Mhm.
And I was like, wow, that's pretty interesting. He's like, because you know what? Like, we are so busy that we're not even willing to look within. We're not even willing to create that quiet time to be with ourselves. He's like, we're in a society where we're so busy and we're so over, like you said, overstimulated and over, I got to do this, I got to do that, that to be still and be quiet with our own thoughts are terrifying to some of us. And I was just like, it was so powerful when he was like, just watch the show, because it almost gives us permission to have the thoughts that we're resisting. Like, just have the thoughts and let them go.
Mm-hmm.
And know that if you're persistent enough, they're going to, like you said, not be as intense and as frequent, and you're going to start to get a handle on that. And it'll be a different experience for you. Absolutely.
It's if we could spend all the time watching, doing silly things, we should be able to spend a little bit of time doing things that'll help us more than 100 times more than the silly things.
Right.
Not to say that you shouldn't have fun. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying use your time wisely.
Right.
And candidly, if you want to really think about it in the most dramatic way, you can die tomorrow morning. And if you died tomorrow morning, where were you at that moment in death? Were you ready for it? Were you peaceful enough for it? Or were you too scared of it? And the idea is you live your life to prepare for your last day. And the reason that the yogis talk about your last day is because they say the way you live your life is the way your afterlife is going to be. So if you're living your life in a profoundly spiritual way, and again, spirituality is non-denominational. I'm just qualifying this.
Yeah.
It's not denominational. Mm-hmm. It's the basis of all religions. Mm-hmm. You know, if you really look at it, because in yoga they have 8 paths of yoga, mm-hmm. and they have 8 principles in yoga. And they're all basically, the 8 principles are very similar to, like Christianity, the 10 Commandments. And I know the other religions have their own terms. I just don't know all the religion. I haven't studied a lot of religion, mm-hmm. except what I grew up with. I knew the stuff that I grew up with. Mm-hmm. So the idea of having the do's and don'ts, what you should do and what you shouldn't do, that's inherent in us.
Right.
What's the difference between right and wrong. Well, don't do it wrong. Do it what you know is right. Hurting someone on purpose to beat them on something is not the right way to live. Right. You may have a short-term win, but it's going to come back at some point and smack you.
Right.
So the idea of trying to become better, it gets easier when you spend the time seeing who you really are. God bless you.
Thank you. Absolutely. Oh my goodness.
The idea of sitting for 15 minutes is not like climbing Mount Everest.
Yeah.
It feels like that until you do it a few times. That's all it is.
That's it.
What you don't want to go have the same kind of peace that you do in sleep but you're conscious this time and not out of it. You're conscious.
Yeah.
You spend 6-8 hours in sleep and you only have like about a minute and a half of, oh my God, how good that feels. I'm waking up, right?
Yeah.
Right? Well, not everybody feels that way about waking up, but you know what I'm saying?
I know.
That peaceful feeling before everything starts to churn. So anyway.
I remember when I first did TM and they were like trying to tell me, you're going to do this for 20 minutes and you're going to feel like you slept for 8 hours. And I was like, come on, that's ridiculous. That's not true. How is that is that really going to happen? And I did it for 20 minutes and I came out of that meditation. And because I had gone so deep,
right,
I came right out of it and I felt so refreshed. Mm-hmm. And so like, it literally was like I had just woken up in the morning. I was like, how is that even possible? That was 20 minutes. Like, what? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I believe it. Absolutely. So what's one thing that you want people to know about meditation? Maybe that we haven't covered yet.
Well, it is a very, very, very deep science. And if you take the time to become a student of it, you will be surprised how wide and deep yoga is. Yoga, everybody knows hatha yoga, the yoga, right? Yeah. But hatha yoga is the most gross part of the 8 branches of yoga. It's the most gross part. But the purpose of yoga, hatha yoga, is to prepare the body to be able to sit in meditation. That's part of the principles of Patanjali, who wrote the Yoga Sutras, which are the 8 principles of yoga. And asana is one of the principles, being able to sit, right?
Right.
There's another one with, they're all Indian names, but the long and the short of it is you're going basically from sitting to full realization. And that's what what the principles do. They help you on that path. Yoga is a science. I truly mean that. And
Mm-hmm.
along the way, you get mile markers. You go, oh, that's where I'm at now. You just know. You
Mm-hmm.
know that you just crossed a certain line
Wow.
because it is an inner thing. It's all wired in us. We just have to take the time to do it and discover it. And not a lot of people will do it. But I would challenge anybody to try doing it for 15 minutes a day. I mean, goodness gracious. But the best time to meditate.
Yeah, and tell us your practice. So tell us the best time to meditate. Tell us a little bit about what your routine is. Help us understand what we do.
Sure. So my meditation practice is early morning and late evening.
Got it.
Because it's the quietest time of day.
Mm-hmm.
And morning because you're refreshed, right?
Yeah.
So now you could sit and your mind, you're peaceful. Let's put it that way. You're peaceful because you're still waking up, right?
Yeah.
That's why before you get busy, if you're too busy to meditate and you don't have an hour to sit, like the Buddha said, sit like you do 20 minutes, whatever.
Yeah.
The idea, because that's the best time when you're calm before the storm, calm before the storm.
Yeah.
Be prepared for the storm and be calm during the storm, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then evening, because at evening you've relaxed because you ate dinner, you sat around, you're calm. Mm-hmm. Now, before you go to bed, those are the two times that I've been doing that for a very long time, and it makes the most sense for me,
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
And it works.
Mm-hmm.
So the couple of other simple things.
Mm-hmm.
There's something called and I don't know the Sanskrit terminology for it, but it's called practicing the presence of God. And when I say the word God, I'm talking spirit, I'm talking soul, whatever word you want to use. God's not offended by it. It's not like that kind of a thing. Right. And if anybody's religious, I mean, no, nothing disrespectful.
Right.
So the idea of practicing the presence of God, whatever that term means to you, by practicing it, for me, it's saying when I'm in the middle of something and I'm concentrating, and then I realize that I haven't been thinking about formally that practice of thinking of God, in whether it be that I'm identifying it with a sound like a mantra, or a mantra is just a sound, where I'm just saying, or just saying I love you, Father, or whatever it is, whatever person, or I love you, Jesus, whatever person's identification with spirit is, say that to yourself while you're idle, as opposed to going through the phone, right? Go through the phone first, get it out of your system, and then do that for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But the more you do that, it raises your vibration,
right?
Because you're shifting from your individual focus to a spiritual focus. It's
Right.
very, very, very helpful. And then there's a couple of terms that people love to talk about. Karma, right?
Karma.
So think about karma as universal justice, because some people get away with something here and somebody doesn't get away with something there. However, it's all works out in the end. That's as far as I'll go in that, because that's a whole nother. But here's the joke about karma: good karma, bad karma. If I put in front of you a dish of ice cream and a head of lettuce, and you had to pick one, which one would be good karma and which one would be bad karma? What would you say?
How can ice cream ever be bad karma?
Well, one is feeding a sense, and again, this is just, but the ice cream is like, oh, it's mine and it's my favorite, right? Yeah. And lettuce, because you're doing something that's good for you, and you want to do it, but the other one's more tempting. That's kind of like the silliness of that.
Got it.
So anyway,
awesome.
What else you want to know, or what else?
No, it's all good. You've helped us sort of, understand it better, and I really want people to understand the benefits, because I think, that's always the thing. It's like, tell me why I should do this. How's this really going to help me make my life better? How am I really going to help reduce my stress levels so I'm not like all wound up all the time? So I think you've done a really beautiful job of sharing those benefits. And just reminding people how to do it and that they're not doing it wrong. I think this has been a great conversation, and I really hope people take away to just try it again. Just try it again.
Yeah.
Try to have the consistent practice. Do it. Yeah.
So one thing too is I talk about Yogananda.
Hmm.
If anybody's interested in getting the book, can I show the book?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so this is Autobiography of a Yogi. This is a book.
Uh-huh.
It's profound. I've read this thing 3, 4 times, and I've listened to the CDs at least 25 times.
Hmm.
And it's a narration of the book. But the other thing is they have this beautiful course, home study course, and this isn't a plug for me.
Yeah.
This is if you want to understand things differently. These lessons are so profound. It's all subsidized. So if someone's interested in learning all of the science behind everything I was talking about, and much more than I could possibly explain, this is one thing to consider. However, to get experience in it, there's something called this thing is called I'm trying to see it. It's a self-realization fellowship lessons, but this is an introduction to it. It's called the highest achievements through self-realization. This is the intro. You can get it for free by going to a website, which I don't have it in front of me. But if you're interested in getting
Mhm.
that, I'll email you the PDF. I have the PDF of it. And
Awesome.
reading this it's profound. That's all I
Awesome.
can say about it. Okay.
Amazing. Artie, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And so if people want to reach you, they go to your website, retireintheusa.com, or
Right.
you can connect with you on LinkedIn.
They can
Um,
connect with me on LinkedIn. They can
Perfect.
connect with me on Facebook. If you go to my website, there's a link in there to if they want to talk to me, they can set an appointment with me just from the website. So however they want to do it.
You're the best. Thank you. Thank you so much for
Oh,
coming to my little sphere
oh,
of,
please.
you
Thank
know,
you for everything that you did for me.
it's been amazing to know you. And thank you so much for sharing your experience with us about meditation. I know it's going to help people. And
I hope so. That's the main reason we're doing it.
absolutely, absolutely. Thank you again. And I'm
You're
sure
welcome.
we're
Thank
going to
you.
keep talking.
Of course
All
we
right.
will.
Of
All right.
course. All right. Bye, Artie.
Bye bye, hon. Take care. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.